This is ESPN, the Total Sports Network.
Coming up on
First of the year brings the first for IMSA.
First place is not all that matters here.
and 88's first major sanction race.
This and more next on Speed Week.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us
For 1988's second Speed Week, I'm Bob Jenkins.
And I'm Larry Newber. Cold outdoor and indoor racing, plus the latest news from the world of motorsports, next.
Our first story this week concerns the new midwinter activity for one of auto racing's major leagues. Here's Larry.
Daytona, where the new media facilities and VIP press boxes are finally beginning to take shape. It is also the site of America's most active winter racetrack, and the dawn of January is basically right in the middle of 3 months of activity. Since December, Winston Cup testing, World Go-Kart racing, this IMSA open practice, more Winston Cup testing in January, and of course Speed Weeks in February. This is the first time IMSA has ever done this, and about 25 teams took advantage from the GTP O&U ranks. Surprisingly, only one Camel Light showed, the Chevy Tiga, driven by David Loring, Tom Hessert, and Dave Simpson from ARS. Significant rule changes to encourage more teams to run GTP.
Okay, we really are talking about fine-tuning when you talk about GTP rules particularly. On the normally aspirated end of the scale, we've capped off displacement at 6 liters, made some weight adjustments. The big news, I guess the thing everyone's talking about, is the adjustments on the turbocharged end of the scale, which involves some weight, but I guess the big thing is a restrictor. On the intake side of the compressor, all the air has to pass through a 57-millimeter restrictor, and that's a big change for those guys. Basically, it was unlimited in the past, and they've all had to go back to the drawing boards.
6 P cars here, and one, the Jim Busby Porsche, used the new rules to his advantage.
That's right. We changed the entire rear section of the car. We've changed the underbody of the car, and we've been able to generate more downforce with less drag. Consequently, our lap times are quicker than they've ever been here, and yet we're down on power. We've made dramatic changes to the
itself to allow the wing to stand.
gives it better lift at not such a high angle of attack. And we're terribly surprised. We keep taking wing out, and he says it sticks better, and it goes faster.
You can't believe that.
Well, it seems impossible, but it is working.
That driver, Mauro Baldi, subbing for Bob Wallach, who tore ligaments in his knee running. Mauro went 2 seconds faster than last year's pole. At least Speedway clocks had that. But Busby says, I don't think we went that fast. Al Hobart says, you better not go that fast. Baldi stays on his teammate. The new Virginia base,
How Miller team
dusted off and gussied up the Ford P cars and
brought out both. The front-one driver, Harry Lyon.
former driver John Kalajian has been enticed to go P racing, hiring Jim Rothbard and Bernard Jourdain. And sprint racer Sammy Swindell gets an opportunity in the former Diatley machine. The GTO ranks are swelling. Old SCCA rivals Roush Ford and Protofab Chevy face off in IMSA this year. No significant rule changes, and the updated Mercure, winner of 11 of 12 Trans Am races last year, looks like the Starship Enterprise.
It seems to be working pretty well, and you know, it's a development of the European wing version that they run on a car over there. That there was a production model over there, and it seems to be better. It seems to plant the car a little better, and I think it's a little less drag too. But that's, you know, that's the kind of aerodynamic development they continue to do year after year, and on the production cars as well as on the race cars.
Plenty of GTU rehearsing too, and some stuff want to get it out of your system now. Right, Garth Ullum? The Tom Walkinshaw Jaguars, expected to be very competitive this year, were not at Daytona, but they have time scheduled next week at Talladega. Their drivers for the 24 hours will be Eddie Cheever, John Nielsen, and Raul Boisel in one car, Johnny Dumfries, Jan Lammers, and Martin Brundle in another, and a third driven by John Watson and 2 prominent American drivers to be named later.
The Paris to Dakar Rally, perhaps the toughest of its kind in the world. More than 600 vehicles left Paris January 1st for the 21-day trip to Senegal in Africa. All types of vehicles are participating in the nearly 8,000-mile trip. Porsches, this one driven by Jacques Lafitte, Peugeots, and Mitsubishis, to name a few standard production cars. There are also motorcycles that battle the rough terrain, dust, and hot weather. Quads have their own division, but perhaps most unusual-looking machine in the rally are the service vehicles. They accompany their team cars, but also race themselves. This Range Rover has Formula One driver Patrick Tambay on the driving team. Early stages were led by defending champion Ari Vatanen in a Peugeot. But by early this week, a fourth of the racers had already dropped out, and only about a third are expected to complete the entire distance. Now, among the other drivers in that event, former Formula One driver Clay Regazzoni, who is paralyzed from the waist down.
And another Jackie Ickx, but he crashed out rolling over during an early stage. Our Gary Lee has been in Germany visiting centuries-old towns, the Porsche Test Track and Museum, and the annual presentation of the North American Porsche Cup.
One of the joys of European travel is the old-world flavor of Germany, and nowhere is that more evident in the centuries-old city of Rothenburg. The city was built in the 12th century behind a great walled fortress and has avoided the devastation of war through the past 10 centuries. But Rothenburg is more than a tourist attraction or a walk through history. It remains home to over 6,000 West Germans. Another stop was the Porsche Museum in Stuttgart-Zeffenhausen, where the Porsche motorsports tradition is told with cars and displays, from the first sports car, the 356 Roadster built back in 1948, to some of the cars that made racing history at Le Mans, to the highly successful Can-Am 917 Spider driven by the late Mark Donohue. Here's a car you may not see in this country. It's the new 959 four-wheel drive. Only 25 have been earmarked for the U.S., and the price tag, $250,000. Although we all took a ride in the 959 on the test track, most of the drivers enjoyed their first taste of a rally car on another of the Porsche test facilities. The primary purpose of our trip was the presentation of the Porsche Cup. Dr. Ferry Porsche offered his welcome and congratulations, although we could only speculate on what was being said because it was all in German. Price Cobb successfully defended his 86 Cup by driving a Dyson 962 to 3 IMSA Camel GT victories and 10 top 3 finishes to outpoint Chip Robinson. Cobb's goal for 88 is to win the GT championship, but ultimately he would like to be in an Indy car with Rob Dyson as his car owner.
Do you think you can convince Rob to put together an IndyCar program?
Yeah, you know, it's been a long time discussion, if not understanding, that that's where we both want to go. And it's just a matter of getting him to quit talking about it and just commit. But I know that day will come.
Bob, 87 was the third year in a row that a Dyson driver has won the Porsche Cup.
And I might tell you that Porsche has still not selected its IndyCar driver.
Speedweek is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. New Quaker State with QSX keeps your engine cleaner to last longer. And by Dodge Cars and Trucks. For performance on road and off, it's got to be a Dodge.
Coming up for these racers, the new year starts with a hangover.
And for others, it begins with a month-long journey down under.
You are about to see the smartest oil change you can make. Introducing a new Quaker State motor oil. Now Quaker State has a revolutionary formula called QSX. QSX fights engine choking sludge better than other leading oils to keep oil flowing to vital engine parts. For a cleaner, longer-lasting engine, change your oil. Really change your oil. To new Quaker State with QSX, the smartest oil change you can make.
8 years ago, the promoters at Sandusky Speedway in Ohio decided to race on New Year's Day. Only 6 cars showed up then, but now it's become a racing tradition. The question to some drivers, did you go out drinking last night?
No, we worked on the car for 3 days, but if we win tonight, look out.
Oh, yeah, we're all right to drive. We got home early enough we could get a little sleep and drove up here this morning from Columbus, and we're well enough to drive, have a good time, too.
Yeah, I went out drinking. I even still got my sticker out my hand here, if you can see it.
Well, we can understand why you guys are here, but what about the spectators?
No brain. Die-hard race fans.
Well, my husband loves to go to races, and this is the only place to go today, so it's a good time to start the new year right.
This guy obviously worked long and hard to get his ESPN sign done so it would make TV, and it did. About 2,000 hardy fans showed up for this race in 8 below zero weather and nearly 100 cars for the various events. Our cameraman got the bejeebers scared out of him when this car crashed right in front of him. In previous years, the track has been slick with ice, but no excuse this year. Number 80 is Joe Romano. He'll recover from this 360-degree spin to finish second in the champagne stock class. Other classes were beer stocks and headache stocks. After 30 minutes of racing, it was only a 20-lap race. Terry Adams in the pink wing number 76 drives to victory. What a way to start the 88 season.
Slightly more sophisticated stock cars are being prepared for shipment to the International NASCAR 500 February 28th in Australia. Winston Cup, Winston West, and ARCA machines, 24 in all, are being loaded into special containers for the 16,000-mile journey. Neil Bonnett's Raymouth Racing Pontiac, one of those on its way down under. Other Winston Cup regulars expected to participate, Bobby Allison, Kyle Petty. In addition to the cars, motors, jacks, and other equipment that might not be available in Australia is being sent. 15,000 gallons of 109-octane Unocal racing gasoline also being freighted. The cars and equipment are being shipped from Charleston, South Carolina, and the trip will take 24 days. The shipping line being used, the same one that transported the 1983 America's Cup winner, Australia 2, on its way back home. Dale Earnhardt, Bill Elliott, and defending champion Jeff Bodine are the first three to accept invitations for 88's IROC. 9 more will be selected before the first race in Daytona, February 12th.
While outdoor Midwest racing does occur in the wintertime, most of the racing is confined to indoors. The Indiana Memorial Coliseum hosted the second indoor event of the 1988 season last Sunday. The first in Peoria, Illinois, was last December. Defending champion here, Tom Bigelow, would qualify early on a very slick track and failed to make the feature. Kevin Olson, 1987 USAC midget champion, will substitute for Rich Vogler in the number 1 car, while Rich is in New Zealand. Johnny Parsons will be joined by his son, Johnny III, today, but the younger will fail to make the field. The Munchkin, which won a speedrome race last year here on ESPN, will also have a tough day finding the yellow brick road. Bev Griffiths is pole sitter and early leader, her first time in an indoor feature. But a nudge from Kevin Potter puts her out of the race. Mel Kinnon, the yellow number 34, was fastest qualifier. His move toward the front temporarily derailed by an encounter with Robbie Parrish. A little more than 3/4 through the 100 laps, Potter coasts to a stop with steering problems. The lead goes to 47-year-old Sam Eisenhower, who's been racing here at Fort Wayne since 1966. Olson and Johnny Parsons battle for second. KO tries a move that doesn't work, but does send tires.
Parsons goes on to finish second,
while Kenya takes third and assumes the early USAC midget point lead.
North America's highest flying colt
racers
don't race on wheels at all. Belts. Now, twin-track snowmobiles. The 11-race Formula One season is already 3 races old and has produced 3 different winners. Ironically, each winning in his home state or province. Michigan's Dave Reimenschneider, and Ontario's Gary Vasser, who hadn't won in 2 years. This perhaps the move of the year so far. Vasser keeping Donahue, who is the points leader, from winning 2 in a row. In 2 weeks, the Eagle River World Championships, where the big winner historically has been Jockville Miller.
Relive the great races of the 50s, 60s, and 70s on video. High quality and professionally produced. Order our newest Racing Classics number 206, a 1-hour video highlighting the 1962 Dirt Track Championship with 7 exciting races, just $59.95. Or Thrills and Spills, an action-packed video, beta or VHS, just $49.95. Call 1-800-992-VIDEO or write Dick Wallen Productions, P.O. Box 2261, Escondido, California, 92025.
ESPN is now the proud home of Motor Week Illustrated, America's first and foremost weekly racing news show. Keep pace with the racing action on television's fastest half hour. If it goes fast, catch it on Motor Week Illustrated.
Travel arranged through Eastern Airlines. Come fly with the one that can take you view to the sun. Eastern, we've got your ticket to the beautiful beaches of Florida and the Caribbean.
2 deaths in the world of motorsports to report. Early in 1986, we aired a story here on Speedweek about Clint Bronner. Clint, who ranks second among mechanics in all-time IndyCar wins with 51, died recently in Phoenix. Our tribute to him is part of that story from 2 years ago. Here's Bob.
Many famous drivers have competed here on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway down through the years, but sometimes we tend to forget the chief mechanics who helped the drivers achieve their success. One of those chief mechanics came here in 1938. His name, Clint Bronner. Clint saw Indy cars evolve from front-engine roadsters to rear-engine rockets. He became identified with a straw hat and a red bandana, and he cited 2 biggest thrills in racing.
First was winning the Monza 500 in 1957 with Jimmy Bryan over there on the High Bank track. And then, of course, in '69 when I won the Speedway with Mario Andretti, and we built the car ourselves at home in the backyard.
That Monza winning car with Bryan was a Dean Van Line special and a team that Clint headed from 1963 to 1966. Eddie Sachs put a Dean car on the pole at Indy in '61. The '69 Mario Andretti win was Clint's only Indy victory, although Mario won the pole twice. After he retired from racing, he concentrated on buying up Model T and A engine parts in the Phoenix area. And he was busy rebuilding and restoring antique midgets. He told us in the early part of 1986, in his opinion, narrowing the tires, getting rid of ground effects, and wings would greatly improve IndyCar racing. The Ford engine that Clint once worked on is now quiet, and the straw hats are put away. But the mark that Clint left on racing will not soon be forgotten.
Many in the sport have made a difference in this world, and thoughts of them bring smiles even after death.
Chitwood, racing other recent loss, dying from natural causes
in Tampa. Famous as a daredevil, before him the auto thrill show business was mostly vagabonds and short-lived organizations. He brought stability. 1987, his show's 44th straight year. Through tireless advocating in auto safety and movie work, Clark Gable's To Please a Lady and James Bond films, he also brought respectability. Born George Rice Chitwood, Denison, Texas, August 12, 1912, the same night the Titanic sunk. Joey's life was just the opposite, forever rejoicing in the ascent. In small-town parlors and barbershops, in America's most remote prairie towns, anywhere they've ever held a county fair.
Posted the name Joey Chitwood.
But he was first a fearless race driver, excelling in early sprint car days, the gritty 1930s, no belts, no roll bars. A sports writer started his Cherokee Indian bloodline story, but it was mostly legend, maybe.
Ted Horn and Bill Holland,
his contemporaries, and he qualified for 7 straight Indy 500s. Joey claims the first seatbelt use at Indy, 1946, and he remained active, driving simple stunts into his 70s, performing with sons Joey Jr. and Tim, and grandson Joey III. Personally preferred tribute, Joey Chitwood, successful Indian big car driver, and history's greatest name in auto thrill shows.
Our Dick Wallen Racing Classic goes back to 1965 and the first modern-era IndyCar race on a road course. Mario Andretti was in his 2nd season of IndyCar racing, but had a lot to learn. After that practice spin, Mario went on to capture the pole position for this 150-mile race at IRP, July 25th. Drag racer turned IndyCar driver Art Malone carried an in-car camera. This was the 8th race on the 18-event schedule in 1965. Jim Clark had won Indy, but only one driver, Jim McElreath, had won more than once. Boyd captured the most recent race at Trenton just a week before. Johnny Rutherford came from the dirt tracks of Texas and managed to find a little dirt. There were both dirt cars and the relatively new rear-engine machines. This driver, Roger McCluskey, would be national champion in 8 years. Foyt led Andretti for the early part of this race. Now here's another dirt specialist, Ralph Liguori, having difficulty controlling his front-engine Daimler machine. And here is Ronnie Duman, who would make the Indy 500 5 times, would die in a racing accident in June of 1968 at Milwaukee. Even Mario Andretti slid off course during the event, but he's not out of contention. Gordon Johncock would go on to win twice at a racetrack just down the road from IRP, the 2.5-mile oval. Foyt and Mario would battle for the lead for the entire race, and they would battle for the national championship in '65. Jim McElreath, as John Zink track burner, would not make it 3 wins today. Here's the pass for the lead. Mario uses slower traffic to go around Foyt and win. But A.J. finished a close second. Believe it or not, Mario would win the national championship this year, but this would be his only victory. Many auto racing museums around the country specialize in different types of racing, but a group of planners in southern Michigan is trying to create a national Hall of Fame that involves all types. This is the Baseball Hall of Fame, located in Cooperstown, New York, established in 1939. The National Football Hall of Fame is in Canton, Ohio, established in 1963. There is no National Motorsports Hall of Fame, but there are plans for one in Coldwater, Michigan. Planners received $25,000 from the state of Michigan for a feasibility study, and that was matched by a grant from the city of Coldwater.
We have a 25-acre tract of land that has been donated to the Motorsports Hall of Fame through a family trust in Coldwater, the Legg family, Lewis E. Legg family.
The tract of land is on the west side of town.
On Highway 12, within the city limits. There is an old farmhouse on the property that has been in the stages of being renovated right now that we will be utilizing at some point for temporary offices and then sort of a reception center.
In addition to
this late plan call for the American Auto Racing Writers and Broadcasters Association library relating to all motorsports, and an educational hands-on area where visitors can actually experience what it's like to, for instance, be behind the wheel of a dragster and to participate in an actual pit stop. Groundbreaking is hoped for sometime later this year, with the first building finished in 1989. Now, in addition to the library, the American Auto Racing Writers and Broadcasters Association, Aruba, will locate their Hall of Fame in Coldwater, originally at Ontario Motor Speedway, of course, now closed.
And speaking of Aruba, their All-American team, which we told you about last week, included Kenny Bernstein. Well, he's named Johnny Rutherford to drive his King Protofab Indy car at Indianapolis.
This week's Bernstein File, brought to you by Quaker State, concerns Oscar, on-site computer-aided research.
High technology in motorsports is certainly important today. It's something we report about.
Speedweek the past few months.
But Buick Motorsports has even taken it a step further with what is known as Oscar. Oscar's not a person, it's a truck that houses a
whole computer system for Buick race teams.
What's unique about this is it is
all forms of racing. It's used in Indianapolis, NASCAR,
into GTO, GTP, GTU, and even in drag racing. And it's able to help the teams develop and understand what's going on with the race car. Not guessing anymore, no more guesswork, and that's real important to the teams. It makes it even more valuable because when they look at the tape, they can say what the driver is telling them, correlate the two together. It makes it a lot easier to make changes in the car. I'm Kenny Bernstein.
A.J. Foyt, B. McNears, C. Humstuck,
D. Mark Donahue, or E. Al Holbert. Larry will have the answer in a moment.
This is ESPN, the Total Sports Network.
And the answer to this week's trivia question: Foyt and Mears have each set the record in the last year, but not in a Porsche. Neither Stuck nor Holbert, Porsche stalwarts, have ever gone for the record, but D, the late Mark Donahue, set the mark in a Porsche Can-Am car in 1975.
Finally, the second annual All-Pro Enduro 300 Super Nationals from Pensacola, Florida. The starting field 116 strong. The weather wasn't especially good, cloudy, some rain, and 35 degrees for the 1,200 spectators. 19 states were represented in the field, which was determined by qualifying races. Numerous yellows and one red flag. Laverne Young is headed the wrong way on the front stretch and is hit head-on by Pete Franklin. Franklin suffered a broken ankle and other injuries. Somewhere in this flock of cars is Jerry Lawley, a former co-owner of the Speedway. He dodged all the spins, crashes, and other encounters to win the race, which finished well after dark. And our hats off to those people who endured the cold at Pensacola and also at Sandusky.
And Bob, next week on Speed Week, a report on Neil Bonnet's first time in a stock car since his Charlotte accident last year. I'm Larry Newber.
And I'm Bob Jenkins. We leave you this week with Dick Wallen in-car video from Indianapolis Raceway Park.
Speed Week has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. New Quaker State with QSX keeps your engine cleaner to last longer.